First off, thank you all for inviting us. We're very excited. There's a lot of anticipation behind this. We have a lot of support from regional support behind us, a lot of anticipation, and no one's more excited and anticipating this more than we are. Like Chris said, this has been something that's been in the works for over 2 years. We've been working at it, and we're now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it doesn't look like it's an oncoming train. So, sure. Actually, is this on? Okay, sure. So the light at the end of the tunnel is not an oncoming train, we don't think. We hope to be open probably in the next 6 weeks, serving beer right across the street. So that's kind of our goal right now, to get all the licensing done, get the inspections done, and then be ready to roll. So when we talked about this, I said, what are we really looking at as a presentation? Do you want about beer, history, Hamilton, us, and it's just going to kind of be a condensed version of all. Some folks may have gone to the Fitness Center where we did a speech earlier in the fall where we talked about our progress and what our plans were. So really what we wanted to talk about today is, well, first off, we're talking about beer. So we're not talking about rocket science, we're talking about beer. If you want to advance the first slide. So when we talk about beer, what are we really talking about? The main ingredients of beer, of course, is water, which Hamilton has been noted as the best tasting water in the world. So that's a pretty doggone good start for a brewery. And then when you talk about malt, we are in the Midwest. We have access to a lot of malted barley, and that makes it another good benefit. You get into hops, which hops really are nothing but more than a spice to beer. So as chefs operate with cumin and coriander and cayenne pepper, a brewer is going to use Simcoe hops and Saaz hops and Willamette hops and Nugget hops and all these different species of hops that are going to bring out various flavors in beers. And then of course you have yeast, and yeast are your 5 billion unpaid employees that do all the work that actually ferment the sugars from the malt and create the beer. So that's really what we're talking about. And we're talking about something that goes back thousands of years, literally back to the ancient Egyptians. There have been fermented liquids known that would today's terms be known as meads or beers that have been around in ancient Egyptian times, where they showed the hieroglyphics of the baker. And the baker would have the vase near him of the water supply, and they would take the bread, put it in the water, and if you let that sit a little bit, you have the elements of a fermentable liquid. And when they would drink it, all of a sudden they got this nice happy feeling. So that happy feeling was the alcohol that was being fermented in that water. So it's been around for a long, long time. There is a brewer called Dogfish Head Brewery. They're out of Rehoboth, Delaware. They make a beer that you can actually buy today if you go to Jungle Gyms and a lot of bottle shops in the area. It's called Midas Touch. And that came from an ancient, it was an archaeological dig of what they determined was King Midas's tomb. And they found a drinking vessel. They analyzed it under an electron microscope, and they actually found microscopic elements of a brewer's yeast. And the brewer's yeast is very important because there's different species of yeast, but only a brewer's yeast can actually live and thrive in an alcoholic environment. Most other yeast is going to die out. So when they found this, they said, well, my goodness, this is kind of proof that there was beer even back in King Midas's day. Well, what would they have actually brewed? So they found local plants. Of course, honey was your fermentable sugar, and they basically produced this beer also with, I believe they use Muscat grapes as well. So it's a very interesting beer, but it's an ancient style. It's a throwback to not only pre-Prohibition, but we're talking way throwback. And that's something that you can try if you just wanted to taste something that was a little bit different, a little bit off the wall. There's Dogfish Head's motto is off-centered ales for off-centered people, and that's kind of what they do. They do a lot of very interesting ingredients in their beers. So we fast forward this whole beer making culture into the Bavarian region, in Germany, Belgium, Poland, Czech Republic. You start getting into more of what we're seeing in today's lagers. And in 1516, they passed a law called Reinheitsgebot. And Reinheitsgebot was a law that said if you're going to call something beer, you have to only have those 4 ingredients. The water, the malt, the hops, and the yeast. Interesting thing though, they didn't know what yeast was in 1516. They thought it was actually a gift from God. That's why a lot of beer is actually produced by Trappist monks. We have this Reinheitsgebot law that is actually still in effect today, which is kind of interesting because if you want to call something beer in Germany, it's still, the Reinheitsgebot is still applies. I don't think you get thrown in jail for it these days, but you definitely may have some issues calling something beer that may have something else in it. Fast forward that to the American Revolution. Much of the American Revolution was planned in taverns in Boston and around Boston. There was planning events, meetings. A lot of that happened in taverns where people would sit down and have a pint of ale. George Washington was a brewer. Thomas Jefferson was a brewer. Ben Franklin was a brewer. There's a brewery out of Philadelphia called Yards. Yards Brewery did a throwback recipe to revolutionary times where they actually found a letter from George Washington talking about using blackstrap molasses in his porter. And Yards Brewery created a sampler 12-pack with 4 beers of each 3 of the brewers. One of George Washington's porter, Thomas Jefferson's golden ale, and Ben Franklin used actually spruce tips in a beer instead of hops. The spruce tips have oil in it. Those oils acted as a spice and created a spruce tip beer. So kind of an interesting way when we progress through history and how beer has been around forever. Fast forward now locally. Prior to Prohibition and in the late 1800s, believe it or not, Butler County was consistently either number 1 or number 2 in barley production in the state for decades. They produced a tremendous amount of barley. There were actually 6 malt shops or maltsters in Hamilton. Songham malt shop or malt facility is still there on D Street. They produced a tremendous amount of malted barley that would then put on boats, keel boats, and ship it down river. Also, a lot of it was used here in Hamilton. There have been multiple breweries in and around Hamilton. You've got Cincinnati Brewing Company. Cincinnati Brewing Company, they called it that because they weren't sure anyone would know where Hamilton was. So they called it Cincinnati Brewing Company. There was Eagle Brewing Company, Water Street, Martin Mason, Peter Schwab. Peter Schwab's brewery produced a beer called Pure Gold. That was distributed as north as Detroit, all the way over to St. Louis and Pittsburgh. That was the distribution footprint, which is pretty big for a brewer considering it's pre-1900s. They were producing, some Hamilton brewers were producing up to 400 barrels a day. That's 800 kegs if you're in a keg frat party type mode. So that's a lot of beer. So there's been a lot of beer produced in Hamilton, but there hasn't really been anything in about almost the last 80 years. And that's where we wanted to come in. When we look at this craft beer explosion, from 2009 to 2013, 1,035 craft brewers have opened. That's just through 2013. The 2014 and 15 has even been more. There's been a 17.6% increase in 2014 to 21.7 million barrels, and a 22% growth in dollar sales to $19.6 billion. This is on top of 2013, where there was another 17.2% increase in growth and a 20% dollar sale in growth in 2013. So the craft beer industry has absolutely exploded. People's taste buds are starting to wake up. They're starting to experience different flavors, experience different tastes. You're finding out different things you can do to beer to impart different flavors. It actually has a bit of an advantage over wine in pairing with food because of one thing: carbonation. Carbonation does a great thing when it comes to food pairings. It helps cleanse the palate. So it offers you a little bit more than what wine can offer when it comes to that, to food pairings. Craft beer, as far as its contribution, about $55.7 billion to the U.S. economy and over 424,000 jobs. There were 4,269 craft breweries in the country at the end of 2015. The previous high in the country was 4,131, and that was in 1873. So when we think that this craft beer bubble is going to burst and there's just too many breweries out there, we couldn't be farther from the truth. Because back in 1870 census, we had about 38 million people in the country. Right now, we're close to about 321 million people, and we have roughly about the same amount of breweries. So plenty of room to grow, and we're getting into an era where prior to Prohibition, every little town, every community had their own brewery. That's what our goal is. We want to bring this to Hamilton. We want to bring this to Butler County. And we think that there's an opening for us, and that's what's really been driving us throughout this whole process. As far as beer, when we start to centralize it, we start to centralize it in Ohio. Ohio actually does pretty well. We're ranked 10th in the United States with 110 craft breweries. And this is up from just 45 craft breweries in 2011. So even within the state, we're seeing this huge influx of craft breweries where people are traveling to visit these breweries. It becomes a tourist destination. I know a lot of people around here, a lot of people I hang out with will drive downtown and they'll visit places like Mad Tree and Rivertown and Rheingeist. They're great places to go. They're fun places to go and just hang out, experience some different tastes of beer and just relax. And that's kind of what we want to do here. We want to offer this to the citizens of Hamilton and greater Butler County area. The craft beer industry in Ohio, it's estimated it contributes about $2.1 billion to the Ohio economy. So that's a pretty big chunk of change that it adds. And these figures are all coming from the Brewers Association. They monitor all these numbers and put out yearly totals. Right now, there's close to about 20 different craft breweries in and around the greater Cincinnati area, including northern Kentucky. There's 2 nano breweries in Butler County right now, and by nano, that means they're under 200 barrels of production in a year. So there really isn't any true craft microbrewery in Butler County to date. I know that Rivertown is expanding from their Laughlin facility up to Monroe, and I'm anticipating that to be a nice setup. They make some good beers, and there is a lot of camaraderie between the brewers locally. We've received a lot of help, a lot of assistance, a lot of guidance from a lot of the local brewers, helping us steer through some of the waters and to make sure that we're set up properly. And that's great because we are where they were when they started. So there is a helping hand mentality through all the local brewers, and it's a nice culture to be in. So now we focus even a little closer about Municipal Brew Works. There's 5 of us involved. 3 of us are local, 2 of us are in Wapakoneta. The 5 of us have a passion. There's a passion towards craft beer. There's a passion towards the city. There's a passion toward the county. There's a passion to making a place for people to come. Make it a place that accentuates the landscape of downtown Hamilton and really pushes forward what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make Hamilton a place to work, live, and play. And we want to offer them the place to play. A place to start your night off before you go to River's Edge Amphitheater to see a concert, or before you go to one of the local restaurants, or before you go to a show or a presentation at the fitness center. We want to provide that place. We want to provide that place for you to come afterwards so you can talk about it, so you can have fun, play some games. We'll have some games, cornhole, various things set up, a little courtyard outside to enjoy the weather. That's important to us. Myself, I'm a home brewer of about 17 years. So I've visited over 200 craft breweries in the last 5 years. I actually work with Great American Insurance, so I get to travel a little bit, and when I do, I always look out for the local breweries. I'm also one of only 16 certified cicerones in the entire greater Cincinnati area. And a cicerone is to beer as a sommelier is to wine. It goes through extensive tasting, which I don't mind, and testing. And recently passed and got through with that. We're taking that and moving that into the brewery, where there will be a certified cicerone, at least level 1 beer server on staff there available at all times, because we want to increase the customer's experience. If you have questions with regards to certain glassware, food pairings, what a beer style is, what it's supposed to taste like, we want to be able to give you that information. We want to make it a full experience so it can be fun. We have our head brewer is Sean Willingham. Sean has been assistant brewer at Cellar Dweller Brewery in Morrow, which is part of Valley Vineyards. Sean's been there a few years, He's also a home brewer of about 8 or 9 years, and his home brew system is something that I drool over every time I see. Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson's here today. Mark is a local guy. He graduated from Baden High School. He started 3 companies on his own that have all done really well. He's also done a lot of contracting, so he's helping out tremendously with the build out. The interesting thing about this is that between the 5 of us, we all bring something different to the table. With me, with the insurance industry, I kind of have more of a risk management side. Mark's got more of the entrepreneurial spirit as well as the contracting side. Sean is our head brewer. We have David Fry. David Fry is our CFO. He's currently a CFO and has been a CFO for about 17 years for a communications company in Wapakoneta. So we've got our financial experience there. And then also Aaron Holtz. Aaron Holtz works for that same communications company that Dave does, and I've known Aaron for about 25 years. Aaron actually is the one that got me interested in home brewing. And he is one of the IT guys for that same communications company. Aaron's family has also owned a restaurant in Wapakoneta called the Lucky Steer. They've owned that for close to 30 years. So if we ever decided to expand into a brew pub or create something even more or expand, that gives us a little bit of advantage and knowledge and experience moving forward. So that helps out, I think, a lot. So as far as the group goes, that's us. We do plan on hiring an assistant brewer and some bar staff to bring some jobs to the area and help out the local community there as well. What we'll be brewing on is a 15-barrel system. It's from Crawford Brewing Equipment in Iowa. We wanted to stay made in the United States. We also wanted to stay as local as we could with regards to the build-out. Our contractor is local. Our HVAC unit was purchased from a local spot. Our graphic artist who came up with our new logo is from Lemon Grenade here in Hamilton. Our architect is CDA, Mike Dingledine's group with CDA. So we try and stay as local as we can because that's what's going to keep us going, and that's what we want to contribute, is to the local environment. We're going to have 20 taps. We will, of course, will not start off with 20 different beers, but we will gradually work our way up to that amount. Our 4 mainstay beers, year-round beers, is a blonde called Approachable Blonde. This is a nice, very light blonde ale, easy drinking. It's the beer that's going to convert you to craft beer. So if you're big into the macro styles, this is one you want to try. We can also do a lot with it, and as you'll see in a minute. We've got Courageous, which is it's a white IPA. An IPA is an India Pale Ale, a little more hop-forward beer. We also have 1791. 1791 was the year Hamilton was founded, and we're trying to incorporate a lot of these names into the names of our beer. And that's a Belgian stout. So while it is a stout in character, the Belgian yeast adds a little bit of a fruity ester quality to it, which makes it a little different from the normal stout that you'll find out there. And then also the Station 2 Rye Pale Ale. Station 2 is actually where we are. The old municipal building used to be the hub of activity in Hamilton. We want to be that. And we're taking over the old Station 2 Fire Department. So Station 2 is our Rye Pale Ale. The rye adds a nice little bite to it. We will also have 2 to 3 seasonal beers. Seasonal beers, we'll rotate those out as needed. Dark Shell, which is a black IPA. Dark Shell was what they referred to our section of the building. It was a dark shell. So we had a lot of work to do to actually get it up and running to where it would be a place that we could use. We also have 1066, which is a double IPA or an India Pale Ale. 1066 is actually the Hamilton Police Code for drunk and disorderly. And this is a 9% beer, so you want to be careful with the 1066. And there's also the Soldiers, Sailors, and Pioneers, which is the Belgian, the double, the triple, and the quad. We'll come out with those as well. The experimentals, we're going to take a lot of one-offs. We'll add watermelon to the blonde, make it a watermelon blonde for the summertime. We have one called Long Slumber, which is an English old ale. We'll do that in the winter. It's a nice big hearty beer, but we can whiskey barrel age that or bourbon barrel age that, add completely different flavors to it. Should be really fun. And then we're also looking at having a few beers from some local breweries. Mad Tree, Rheingeist, some folks that are local. We want to showcase some of them as well. As far as food, we will not be serving food. We will have food trucks. We also want to highlight local restaurants, either through table tent menus or catering nights or delivery. But we definitely want to have folks bring food in or be comfortable to order food. We talked to Jamie here at the Marriott about a little limited menu table tent that would be available during their hours of operation here, so you can just walk it right across. We do have hookups for food trucks, so they won't have to run the noisy generators outside. They can just plug in, and while you're sitting outside relaxing, you can smell the food being cooked in the food truck next to you. So the last portion, and I'm almost done here, I have a tendency to talk a lot, so if there's any questions or anything after this, please let me know. They told me 20 minutes, and I'm like, that's going to be tough. But the big thing with us is serving the community. We definitely want to contribute more than we ever take out. We want to offer a lot. We want to, like I said, become that place where people go to. We want to show our passion in the city, in the greater Butler County area, in the craft beer industry, in the beers that we offer, in the experiences that we provide to our customers. And that's our goal. We want to educate. We want to help educate through the Cicerone program by having our servers, or at least a certified beer server there that can answer any questions and help folks increase their experience. We want to, like I said, pair with local restaurants. We also want to host a local home brew club. That's where I started. That's where most of the brewers in this area, most brewers around here started with some sort of crazy Mr. Beer kit where they blew up their kitchen and made, sugary malt go everywhere and burned things up, and it tastes god-awful, but you taste it and go, I think it's okay. I just need to tweak it next time, and it'll be all right. But that's where we all started. So it's kind of fun to me to offer a home brew club. And then as we share experiences and we share discussions with regards to our endeavors in this homebrew, we'll have a homebrew competition where the best in show, let's scale it up. Let's put it on a big scale. Let's make a big production of it, turn it into kegs, and distribute it to the local bars and restaurants. I think that would be a fun experience. The other issue is with the guest brewer program. I think we want to be involved, if we really want to be involved in philanthropic organizations and we really want to be involved in charitable organizations, it's not enough to just give a gift card or just give something and say, here's some free beer, which is, I believe it's illegal to give away free beer anyway. One of the things we can do is work a guest brewer program where we sit down and we work a collaboration of a particular beer for a certain event, whether it's a charitable organization or whether it's an anniversary of something, we can work with them. We've been working with the Hamilton Fire Department with our Station 2 Rye Pale Ale, where a portion of the proceeds will go to their honor guard. When Patrick Walterman unfortunately passed away, we were made aware that their honor guard really has no budget. So when there are ceremonies, they really have to take it out of their own pocket. So to help with that, we said, you know what, let's take a portion of the proceeds of the Station 2 Rye Pale Ale and we'll put it to the budget of the honor guard to allow them to do what we feel that they need to do. And it's the right thing to do, and that's what we want to be part of. The other issue is we're going to conduct tours. But not only the brewery, the building. That building's fantastic. The Heritage Hall section of that building is amazing. That building has so much history to it. And it's been sitting rather dormant for a while. So when we talked to Chris and Anthony at the mill and the folks at the mill, and we walked through it, it had a lot of deficiencies when you looked at it. And I was like, but you know what? I see it. I see it. And that passion kind of keeps you going. So it's very important for us, like I said, we want to bring back that building. That building was the hub of activity in the entire city. The jail is still there. The city council chambers is still there. The McCloskey carvings in the building are still there. That place has been around for a while. And we want to become the hub of activity. So our brewery tours will not just be through the brewery itself, but we're also going to include the rest of the building. So folks that visit us and they experience this, they'll get a little bit of taste of what this building and what's out there. And then also we will offer various private tastings and tours to charitable events and organizations for auction purposes to help raise funds for local events. And I think that's a way for us to get involved. And that is, if you want to advance to the next one, that's all we've got. That is actually a real picture of our brew kettle, and we just can't wait to get it fired up. So thank you very much.
sits here.
Interesting enough.
Yeah.